just to kind of prep you guys, what I'm gonna need throughout this is one or two guys with the Bible handy just to read a couple verses. Um, but so I think we're probably good to go to get started. Let me start recording this. See, now I got to get out of this to start recording it.
I think it's recording, James.
Oh, it is recording. Perfect.
Yeah.
I started off with my strong foot on the recording. All right, hey fellas. So some of you guys don't know me. My name's James. I was hold on. Now I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, Jordan, can you? Yeah, it was Jordan. There we go.
Oh, of course it's Jordan. Um, and so yeah, my name's James. I'll give you guys a little bit of background so that way you can kind of see what my biases that I'm aware of and maybe some that I'm not aware of as we go through this. And I'll explain to you why I was kind of interested in this topic in just a second. But yeah, my name's James. I was born and raised in DC. Don't hold that against me. Um, was in the Navy for a little while. Did Navy EOD, which is like the bomb squad. A couple tours in Iraq. Was lukewarm that entire time. To tell you the truth, I was not. I wouldn't classify myself, knowing what I know now, as a follower of Christ. I was definitely in the world, and my I knew there was a God. Uh, Never really gave Jesus passing thought though, and I was raised Catholic, so I was a little bit jaded that whole time. Even went to Catholic high school and all of that, and it was just more like okay, that's a them thing. I believe in God. It was one of those kinds of things. So I was raised with a lot of doctrine. Um, and then later on in life, linked up with Jordan. First met him when we were doing some anti-child trafficking training out in Utah, and he was on my team of four. And for the first 5 minutes, I didn't like Jordan, and then on the sixth minute, I was like, "No, this guy's legit," and it's been that way ever since.
And that's kind
Um,
of a record because it's generally about 3 days before somebody likes me.
but uh, but yeah, I mean, it's been, and then ever since then, um, from Ukraine with Jordan to doing some search and rescue stuff and some other things here with the Florida Special Missions Unit. I'd follow that dude anywhere. And so, anyway, so that brings me to here, where, and it's kind of interesting hearing Jordan talk about Bill, how Bill kind of lit a fire for Jordan. I would say that's a pretty safe description of what Jordan did for me. And it's pretty cool how you watch this fire spread, because a lot of my lukewarm friends from back home that I was born and raised with, it was kind of like a Goodwill Hunting thing where the Italian and the Irish Catholics were staying together, in DC. And so there's a lot of loyalty there, but those guys are in the world. So it was actually those guys who motivated me to start thinking this way, because so many of them, and there was a little bit of that with me too, were very like, um almost like they needed some more evidence. I wouldn't call them doubting Thomases. I wasn't a doubting Thomas, but we serve a rational God, and there's nothing, and there's a anyway. So I'll get into all that stuff, but that was kind of like my thought process for wanting to kind of put this thing together. And not just that, not just with people that we know and love, but also, I'm sure you guys can attest to this too, but when you're just speaking, like I do at least, about Jesus as he comes up in normal life to strangers, there is a lot of that the sky daddy comments and the Jesus isn't real kind of thing. So, we're not looking to convert people within 30 seconds here, but at least, at the very least, maybe we have one more tool in our toolbox to plant some seeds and walk away. And hopefully that's what you guys get out of this too. So I can't see you, because I'm clearly a technical moron when it comes to this stuff. So don't be afraid to interrupt. You know what I mean? I'm just going to keep rolling until I do get interrupted, but it won't be rude if you guys have a question. Just throw it out there, okay? So essentially, what I wanted to do is all these years that I finally became on fire for Christ, I started looking into some of these historical backgrounds and data points, almost like in awe kind of thing, where because I remember reading the Bible or hearing some stories in the whatever, let's say the Old Testament, as I was growing up, and it just sounded like it was a metaphor or it was a such a distant thing. It was like almost mythological. So as I've started paying more and more attention, I'm like, holy shit, this is not uh far away from me. This is actually here on the same world that I'm walking right now. And he left evidence. Now, the other thing I'll say too is as a bomb tech, as an EOD tech in Iraq, some of the things that we would do instead of rendering safe IEDs is we would also have to do post blast analysis. So if there was an explosion like a suicide bombing in Rupa or in Baghdad, we'd have to almost like a CSI team go in there, figure out like everything from the point of origin, the type of device it was, how it was initiated, the size of the explosives, all of that type of stuff. So you're kind of forensically analyzing these situations in Iraq. And I've applied that mindset to some of this stuff that we're going to go through here today. So if you hear me talk about that type of stuff in that kind of way, and you start hearing me nerd out because God did leave a signature. Of course, his signature's everywhere, but with some of these specific events that happen, there's a clear signature that it takes a lot of faith to deny, if that makes sense. All right, so we'll get into it. Let's see here. Of course, as I'm getting into it, I can't switch. I can't go to the next slide.
Hey, while you're figuring that out, I think probably like a little bit of context for James. This is just very interesting to me is so when James and I met, I was awesome, like he said, you know, and of course, like, no, but the reality was right before James had come to this same, we were doing this undercover operator selection, which to be honest was like super heinous. We get like 3 hours of sleep across multiple days, and we had to
Yep.
perform like at very deep cover situations and convince ourselves through different outcomes. And it was really awesome. It wasn't like rucking through the woods for 5 days, but it was just like you had to be locked on start to finish the entire time. And I think out of like 40 or 50 people, like 11 or 12 got picked up, something along those lines. But when I'd met James, God put us on a team together. And right before he came there, now, mind you, by the way, James lives like 30 minutes from where I live, and we never met each other before this. And so when I met him there, um, just I didn't go, oh, let me share the gospel with James. I just was trying to honor God as righteously as possible in a wild situation. And James just saw something different. And all he saw different wasn't me. He saw me personifying God's values in this situation. And we had the opportunity, again, like God's kindness. I was supposed to fly out at like 5 a.m. on the last day, but we didn't get done till like 2 in the morning. And I was like, oh, I'm going to like fall asleep for 45 minutes. Well, lo and behold, my phone went dead. I missed my flight, woke up at like 6:01. I was like, ah, shit. Got a quick rebook. And we end up on a flight together, seated together on the flight after we went through this training. And he kind of shared some of his background to me. And I was like, oh, bud, you don't know this, but you messed up. You opened up faithfulness. Like there's rebellion and faithfulness. And when you start pursuing, it's God's always looking. But when you open the door, he will walk through. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you now, keep searching and you will see truth, right? And so James just did exactly that. So it's like he can credit all these impacts and whatever, but ultimately him searching was this. And I say that so that you guys understand that there's four soils in this analogy Christ gives. I'm going to spread the same word. It's whether that soil is at a point of seeking faithfulness or if that soil is rebellion. My last funniest story for James that I love this is when him and I went to Ukraine. I called him like literally at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and was like, "Hey, tomorrow morning, right after the war started, we're 4 or 5 days into the war. I was like, hey, can you convince your wife to let you go to Ukraine with me? You're going to be on the Polish border, though. We need somebody to send us across rat lines, like basically send us supplies. We're in a war zone. I need somebody I trust to be able to do that." And he's like, "All right, let me chat with her." He's like, "I'm going to be on the Polish border. 100%. You'll be in Poland." So he like convinces her. We link up. We fly to Miami. We link up with another guy. We fly to Germany at that point, getting ready to fly to Warsaw. And when we land in Germany, I talk with the team leader, and he's like, something, 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 tells me this. I kind of giggle a little bit, copy that, get off the phone. And I turned to James and another guy, Justin, who's a friend of mine. Justin was staying in Poland with James, too. And I was like, "All right, Justin, James, I just talked with Jeremy. Justin, you got to stay in Poland with this 20-year-old girl by yourself for 10 days. And James, you're going to Ukraine. However you guys sort that out with your wives, good luck. I'm going to get a burger." Right. And James's faithfulness here is he was just like, "Well, I'm going to discuss that when I get back. So I'll deal with
Yeah.
that problem later."
Yeah, my wife
And
yeah,
yeah,
she's from Philly. I call her the IED I can't diffuse. And the funny thing is she knew. She said, she's like, you're gonna end up in you're gonna end up in Ukraine because that's what you do. That's what happens." And then I was like, "No, babe, Jordan said, like, Poland." And then sure enough, like, that was a long and short of it, that was a hysterical, scary conversation, but it all worked out.
yeah. And what I really loved about that, because I've watched James and been in his life for some time, is there's a lot of moments where we're going to have to do what God's asking us to do, which is well beyond the comfort zone of everybody around us. But once again, I got to watch his faithfulness play out. And in truth, like, we were in a pretty precarious situation. And if James wasn't in Ukraine with us, it would have been rough. And so, all that to say, like, as you're going out, spreading the word is a dangerous game. And so
Yes.
James is getting into this. That's why for both him and I, we chat about this, that having an understanding that I have thoroughly researched this and now I get to operate off of what I know to be true will really help you in your darkest moments. And so I love what you got going on here. I'll stay out of your way now.
Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, brother. Um, all right. So long and short of it, we'll start. Basically, it's like, why bother? Why bother even looking at historical evidence of the Bible? And like, I'm telling you right now, I don't know if maybe I'm just a nerd about it, but whenever we start talking about historical evidence of anything, I instinctively want to start tuning out. But I'm telling you guys, some of the shit in here is just, it's fascinating if you haven't heard it yet. So, uh, the why bother is one, because he is a rational God. He did come here to perform all. Why did he do all those miracles? And it's because he is a rational God. He knew we would need some kind of evidence to say that when Jesus shows up and he says, "Hey, I am that guy. I am the 300 prophecies being fulfilled." We're going to need a little something more than a "trust me, bro." So he's like, that's all he kept doing, was just performing miracles. And that's why he went through those efforts to prove it to us. Also to plant seeds. Now, this is I was just talking to Jordan before we started this, and the way I see it is there's there's a spectrum of this planting seeds where on one side we have the command to like go spread the gospel, and it doesn't mean that we have to be nerds about it. You can just do it like a normal person. But if you have that, if you're filled with the Holy Spirit, that person will will observe that and feel that and know that, whether they're aware of it or not. So we have this command to go make disciples, to go spread the word. But at the same time, Jesus also told us don't throw pearls before the swine. Like, if they're not hearing what you're saying, stop talking and move on. And kind of in the middle of it is, I'm sure Cam or Jordan can back me up on whatever the Bible verse is, but when Jesus tells his disciples, hey, just go without a knapsack, go to these towns. And if you come across one where they don't want to hear what you're saying, like, be like, okay, Roger that. I'm going to stamp the dust off my sandals and keep rolling. So, it's we got to sort that out. And also just for ourselves, just to kind of hear his voice better, to realize he isn't some mythological faraway God. He's listening to what we're saying right now on the Zoom call. All right. So if I could ask someone to pull up their Bible, look up Genesis 19:20, and then read 23 to 26. I'll give you guys a minute to find that. Whoever finds it first, just go ahead and start.
You said Genesis 19?
Yeah, Genesis 19:20 verses 23 to 26.
Okay. The sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt.
Beautiful. Thanks, brother. So
Yeah.
now, see, real quick, it's actually, this is the other thing from my Catholic upbringing, which was fire and brimstone. And, they have the guilt part down very, very well. But the thing they don't have down is explaining what I learned after I left the Catholic faith was learning really what the Old Testament is. In my head, it used to be, man, God is like just killing everybody. He's pretty strict. But really what it is it's a pattern of people who constantly rebel against him for thousands of years. And in the Old Testament, they'll go through like 1,000 years in a sentence. So to us, it seems pretty strict. But it's important to remember how far gone Sodom and Gomorrah were. So, like, before that, those passages the verses that we just read, it's important to remember really how bad Sodom was. Like, just to do the Cliff's Notes version, that the entire chapter that we're in here, that of the verses we just read, two angels from God come down to Sodom and Gomorrah. They go stay with Lot, and Lot is like, hey, this ain't a good place. This is like Southeast DC. Come stay with me. Um, and they're staying in the house with Lot, and they're so bad at Sodom and Gomorrah that all the people, they even say, hold on, let me see if I can find it. I'm just going to start reading where I found it. So it says, now before they laid down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house, and they called to Lot and said to him, hey, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may have sex with them. Like, this is the type of place we're talking about, right? So it's not like God woke up one day and is like, I'm just going to go ahead and like destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. They've earned it because God is perfectly just. So to me, when I first started reading all that stuff, I was like, man, that sounds wild. Fire and brimstone. I remember hearing that from some of these preachers. However, check this out. Historical evidence. So the EOD tech in me, you guys see on your screen that ball that's inside of that, like that rock there isn't rock. It's actually fused sand. And that ball is a sulfur ball. So this was dated to about 1650 BC. Long and short of it. So this is the coolest part to me, though. So naturally occurring sulfur, the highest naturally occurring percentage of sulfur in rock, it's either 0.5% or 5%, right? So let's just go with the highest, 5%. Well, scientists, even the atheist types, analyzed this ball right here. I don't know if you guys can, if I'm circling it on your screen, or maybe that's just mine. But anyway, the ball, that white ball that's right there, is 98% sulfur, which is physically impossible to exist. And the only place you find that in the world is at Sodom and Gomorrah. So, okay, so if you have like, I mean, to me, it takes some faith to say, oh, well, that's not a supernatural thing. That's just coincidence that sulfur balls that fuse sand into rock just so happen to be at Sodom and Gomorrah, where exactly where the Bible says it is. Now, let's see, moving on, still with the same story. Remember that last thing, that the last verse that he read, verse 26, was basically Lot turning back, because she turned back with longing. It's not the fact that she just turned her head. He was reading her heart, and he knew she was longing for the past. I think there's a huge, we can go on an entire hour long lesson on how important that is. But essentially, she was longing for the old life in a town where two random angels show up in the form of men, and everyone in the town wants to bang them, men and women, old and young, and she's longing for that. So that's why, it seems harsh, but it's important to know the background. So anyway, scientific evidence of taking a look at this pillar, which obviously looks unnatural. You know what I mean? That doesn't look like a natural formation. So they analyzed that pillar, and it consists of 80% salt. Now, the soil, I mean, the rocks around it, the ground around it does not have salt. Excuse me, definitely not 80%. So recently, I want to say it was in the past like 10 months, the scientists started analyzing inside of that pillar, and they found traces of textile fibers that date back to 1650 BC. They found collagen and organic matter inside of that column. So all of these characteristics are abnormal to the surrounding land. Now, basically, what we have is, I kid you not, I was so fascinated with this stuff that a lot of these atheist scientists turn Christian pretty quick when they're doing some of these analyses. And so to me, that crazy story that we just heard about how a town was so bad and so depraved that God's like, the only answer right now is fire and brimstone, not just for punishment, but also to make sure he's got to, like, almost like a like a virus. He has to contain it so that it doesn't proliferate into some of the other towns. But he knew that they had no recourse for repentance. So basically, what sounds like an insane story of fire and brimstone, we have this type of evidence. I'm going to go back. We have this sulfur ball, 98% sulfur, when the most naturally occurring is either 0.5 or 5%. And we have, okay, my slides are slow. And we have this pillar that's 80% salt with organic matter inside, and textiles like fabric inside of it dating back to 1650. Now, moving on, here's just another view of it that I thought was kind of cool. So, okay, yeah, so there's Sodom and Gomorrah. Now we'll move on to the Red Sea, right? So we have the Red Sea that my entire life I kept thinking was like, oh, everyone hears about the Red Sea crossing. Probably metaphor, probably mythology. Like, how absurd is it for a Red Sea to be departed? To be parted, I should say. Anyway, so like a nerd, I started looking at this, and you look at it almost like from a military standpoint. So here's a 3D model of the ground underneath the water, exactly where the crossing is. So, do you guys see my cursor moving or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you do? Sweet. Okay, yeah. So obviously, so here's the Egyptian side, here's the Saudi Arabian side. That is a naturally formed land bridge that was there even before the Red Sea crossing. So let's actually go, if someone doesn't mind reading Exodus 14. We won't read the whole thing. I'll stop you guys at some point. but just start Exodus 14, verse 16.
As for you, lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So let's stop right there. So now we have a 3D print, a 3D mapping of what that underwater place looks like. Now, the cool thing about this bridge, I want you guys to kind of like just take a mental picture of that. Now, so let's say God, which I don't believe, I know he did this. Let's say God parted the Red Sea exactly where that land bridge was. There would probably be some more evidence. It would be pretty cool if there was some more evidence that that happened right there, right? It also makes geological sense that because there's another verse in that area where it says the land showed up after he parted the sea. So you can kind of visualize what that would look like if you're standing on the shore and the sea starts to part, the land shows up and it becomes dry. So let's see here. So this is on my bucket list as a diver. I was a Navy diver too. So I want to say this is probably 4 years ago. Divers were diving that land bridge and they found what you're looking at the screen right now is a chariot wheel. They started analyze. It took them about a year and a half to analyze these chariot wheels and the metallurgy, the type of wood, and the dimensions are all consistent, and the manufacturing process are all consistent with that same age of with that same time. The other thing they found, oh yeah, here's another cool. So like this is pretty cool because you can clearly see this is an axle of a chariot wheel. They found thousands of these things all in a line on that land bridge that we just saw, 3D mapped. So here's the axle. They also found thousands of horse hooves, like thousands of horse hooves and human remains all in a line along that land bridge as well. Um, sorry, I didn't know who was reading it, but can you read that same? I think it's in those same passages, but the one where it talks about like the pillar of fire. Basically, just keep reading there. Maybe we'll come across it.
Yeah, 19. Then the angel of God, who was going in front of the Israelite forces, moved and went behind them. The pillar of cloud moved from in front of them and stood behind them. It came between the Egyptian and Israelite forces. The cloud was there in the darkness, yet it lit up the night. So neither group came near the other all night long.
Yeah, so that's the pillar of fire, right? Now put your best EOD hat on, right? Because this part is pretty freaking cool. So this is what they found, and you don't see this on mainstream science. They'll find like what they think are dinosaur footprints, which whether you believe in that stuff or not is fine with me. But I don't see on mainstream science them talking about these footprints here at all. So what you see here, it just looks like a footprint in the sand, but those footprints are dated to the same exact time frame as the Red Sea crossing. And what that is that's all glass. Like that's essentially glass. So okay, so when we were in Iraq, you diffuse all these IEDs, you can't blow up the HE, you can't blow up the explosives because there's buildings nearby, there's civilians. So what we do is we take the explosives and put them in our truck. And over time, when our like haul gets too big, we have to go do a giant demo shot in the middle of the desert. Well, like I'll show them to you guys at some point, but the number of pictures I have of what happens to this sand after like a 10,000-pound shot, it's just beautiful. I even tried bringing one back in my duffel bag, but the glass was so because it was beautiful. It was like fucking purple and blue and green. Like I probably could have sold it for $10,000 if I could find a way to get it back, but it disintegrated, whatever. But the point is the melting temperature of sand, which is the same melting temperature of sand back then, is about like just over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So what you see here is basically sand that is now glass. So if you rubbed your fingers on these footprints, it would feel just like kind of like rough glass. Now, this is the only picture I could find that did it any justice. I don't know these people. This was on the internet, but this is on the Egyptian side of the Red Sea crossing. And what you see here, that's not sand that has accumulated in those little rivets. That entire thing is all one big piece of glass. Now, there's different in the I was looking for it because there's some like darker singed sand that's also glass there, and I couldn't find a picture of it. Um, Maybe I'll keep looking and try to find it, but just basically what I'm trying to explain to you guys is 3,000 degrees happened here. That's that's irrefutable. Science, like as an explosives expert, I am also telling you that is the only explanation is some kind of something that was 3,000 degrees happened here, and it's been like that according to history since the time of the Red Sea crossing. So, like I said, when you start looking at it this way, it's like it does take a lot of faith to not believe this. All right, so let me see if I have anything. Oh yeah, the other thing is too is there are no volcanoes near this spot because what you'll see is you'll see a lot of honestly there's you look at it with a open mind. You know, you track down like any good investigation, you track down all leads, and you'll hear people, even some who purport to be scientists, and they'll say, well, no, that's volcanic. Like these footprints are volcanic, whatever. Well, there's no volcanoes there. Like the closest volcano is 700 miles away. So anyway, it just takes a lot of faith to not believe it. All right, now moving on to Noah's Ark, and we met like, okay, yeah, we're still good on time. All right. So can I ask somebody to read Genesis 6, 13 to 19?
I think Jordan's got a question too. He threw up his hand.
Oh yeah, sorry, I can't see your questions. Go ahead, Jordan.
No,
Yeah.
it's all good. I was just a quick comment that I think is important. One of the things that I always try to remind my kids and everybody is that there is a difference between faith and an absolute knowledge. If you have
Yeah.
absolute understanding of something, then you, by definition, don't have faith. Like, so what I've found in my life is like the deeper you're willing to take challenges of God, the greater the faith that's going to be provided for you because of the opposing fears in situation. And so evidence is very much the same way. Like if God were to come down to every person and just appear and stand before you and say, I'm God, there's no question, and then disappeared, the problem is you wouldn't actually have faith for the challenges you're going to endure. It would be like as I'm walking through an alleyway and I have 40 guys behind me, all armed, and then I see another guy with a baseball bat. There's no faith there. There's just, I'm going to win. It's impossible. There's no way this guy can outprevail me. And so, what God's really going to do is he's going to like set up three shooters around the corner and you're out and there's five guys out there and they all have baseball bats and you're like, yep, I'm pretty sure my guys can clean this up. I feel confident enough they can clean this up. But he's not going to set up a situation where there is an absolute lack of faith for any of us. And that's why, when we talked about Thomas early, that's why God says, blessed are those who have not seen and believe, because you're
100%.
blessed because of the growth you have in that process. And so I think what is really interesting is God doesn't probably, this is my conjecture, that God doesn't want us to see the chariot wheels thousands of years ago. He wants it to match pace with science. So as science starts to rise and LIDAR rises and these things rise that will give challenge, then there's going to naturally be this unveiling that happens with that along the way to constantly put this tensional balance between faith and fear. And so it's kind of neat as we're seeing through some of this stuff. If for thousands of years they had the capacity to go down, dredge this thing, and find all this, there would have been no question across society. But God is perfectly okay with you having doubt. Like, that's okay. And you have
100%.
a
And
revelation to bring you up to that.
no, it's a such an important like point, Jordan, too, because I know like the way I'm talking is I'm like, yeah, that's pretty irrefutable. But at the same time, what you will see if you guys do this research on your own, there's ample naysayers saying, no, that's those chariot wheels weren't, they like basically there's a counter for everything I'm saying in this little presentation here. So there's definitely ample room if you do your research to see both sides of it.
Well,
Um,
and I'll say, James, it is irrefutable, but evidence is not enough to convince people. Like, here's a quick example. We Jess obviously has a huge Instagram following. She'll put up stuff. She put up something of Brody, like what she eats in a day the other day. And it's funny because you'll still have these like gee whizzes that will hop on and say like what she's doing. Oh, that's not how you should do it. Oh, that's bad for kids. That's whatever. And right here in front of you is like a 13-year-old that's 110 pounds with 6% body fat. Clearly, the evidence is there. Like, the kid can squat 185 pounds at 12 years old. The evidence is right there. And yet, people
right.
will attempt to refute. So it's not that, like, the truth is irrefutable, but it doesn't matter. It's the same as like every argument becomes an ad hominem. Like, as soon as the evidence isn't what I want, attack the speaker. And so what you're going
Yeah.
to is, it's not about evidence. It's about, I search this out often for my own edification as I go into war. And when I find a James who's like, I got questions. Well, here's some answers. Not I have questions to substantiate my own belief bias, but I legitimately have questions. And so
Right.
it is irrefutable, but it doesn't mean people won't refute.
Yeah, and the other piece of evidence to that is like Jesus was on earth and people met him and still didn't believe. They saw miracles happen and they were still like, "Nah." So that's a fantastic point. And it is, I think it is also pretty special to keep that because that, I am the other thing is too is yeah, I was raised Catholic and lukewarm most of my life, but the faith I have now is like that pillar of fire. It's like 3,000 degrees. So basically, like even every time I'm an insurance adjuster, so every time I'm inspecting a roof and I'm getting on and off a ladder, some of these roofs are pretty creepy. I have no safety equipment, and every single time I'm just chuckling because I'm like, at this point, I'm like, God, I'll say a quick prayer on my way up or down, and I'm like, hey, your will be done, Lord. I'm going to be as careful as I can, but I know you're in control. If meaning, even if it's your will that I fall off this ladder and I'm in the hospital for a long time or I die, I'm like, well, that's his will, but I'm still going to try to be as careful as I possibly can. So I guess it's that faith part where you don't know for sure, but you believe anyway is so special because it's such a powerful thing. Basically, it's also in keeping with that biblical teaching of like we're strongest when we acknowledge our weakness in Christ because it's not us that's strong, it's Jesus. So you actually have to oxymoronically get realize you're weaker to get stronger. So no, it's a solid point, Jordan. It's huge. All right. So okay, yeah. Can someone read Genesis 6:13 and 19?
Johnny, did you have something?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, guys, I can't see your hands. Sorry, I'll figure that out next time. So just
No, my
just interrupt me.
My bad. No, I just had to, I was gonna to say what you were saying along what you guys were saying is it reminded me, I read it last night, but in Second Peter 3, verse 3, where he says, where he's like, first beware of this, scoffers will come in the last days to scoff, living according after their own desires, uh
Yeah.
saying where the part fell asleep, and then it says they are willfully ignore this. And so I was like, I've heard that before, and I'm just like, man, that's kind of my mindset too. Is like you said, the truth is irrefutable. The truth is going to be presented in a way that people can see it. But however, there's always going to be people that are just going to be willfully, I think, willfully ignorant. And it's like I heard somewhere else say that means dumb on purpose.
Yeah, some of the I mean, my problem is and y this is my weakness. I can't memorize. I understand the points of them, but was it Elijah that was making fun of the Baal worshipers, Jordan? Or was that Isaiah?
Whereas Elijah.
Yeah, that was Elijah. Alright, cool. So, like, a weakness I do have a little bit of Peter in me, I got a little bit of Elijah, where the I'll say it again right now without even feeling bad about it, and I should feel bad about it, where I'm like, the dumbest people I know are the intellectual atheists who have already looked into some of these things, not just what we're talking about here, but looked into the faith, and their pride blinds them to seeing what someone without a high school education can clearly see. So that's that willful ignorance where it's like, people who don't know, who have just like me from 10 years ago, someone like me who just didn't know better, like, yeah, that's dumb, that's ignorant, but I didn't willfully choose after hearing some strong and seeing some strong anyway, I guess you guys kind of know what I'm saying. Are there any hands up? I can't see them.
Yeah, man, I have that all the time in school. I call them brilliant retards. You know what I mean? And to your point, James, that's actually God's character. And I know it's God's character to be like, okay, you're a brilliant retard, because it's what he said to Nicodemus in John 3. He goes, oh, behold, a teacher of Israel, and yet you don't understand these basic things. So
Right.
he is willing to call a spade a spade. And I found that, like, there's a point where I'm trying to give somebody information and it's their lack of wanting to receive it, not a lack of the way I'm saying it. And to which I just generally go, all right, how's that working out for you, bud? You know, because that's my thing is people are like, oh, you should do this. I'm like, really? How's that working for you? Third marriage, how's it working? And
Right.
it's like, yeah, that's rude, but I'm trying to be rude in order to create a break in pattern of the lies they believe. Jesus did the same thing. I'm willing to be an asshole for the village, you know?
Well, and honestly,
Hey,
there's a strong argument saying, like, supporting if someone is that lost, like in their own selves, their own pride. Like, if honestly, if you truly love them, you almost pray them into the hands of the devil because you're like, hey, I'd rather you get your ass beat in this life to where the only option you have is to turn to God, find Jesus, and repent instead of like being prideful till the day you die and going to hell forever. So there's actually, I know it sounds insane, but I think there's a strong argument where that's why God, you know, what do you call it? That's why we have challenges is for growth. So we got any other hands up? Right.
well, I'm just wondering too, like what Jordan was saying around like the scientific research and how God like allows that to happen in his time to support the evidence. I'm just wondering if the examples that you're given, like in dealing with these people, that also like the Lord hasn't opened their eyes or their hearts or their ears to his truth, do you think? Or what do you think causes their disobedience? Or you think they're just willfully disobedient?
I
I'll
think
say
it's
this real quick, James.
yeah.
My background was I was not atheist, but I was high science agnostic, right? And I was agnostic because I wasn't dumb enough to be an atheist. But I was and am very educated on all the oppositions of God, evolution, everything down the line. And the difference between me and friends of mine that were in the same place is as a center point, I don't want to be right. I want to do right. And those aren't the same things. And so this is where sometimes I am perfectly okay with being what that person perceives as an absolute hypocrite if it will crack the nut for some other actual Christian in their eyes to preach the gospel to them. So when I run into somebody that's fully rebellious, I will punch them in the head respectfully without yelling, but I will call them to account for how is that impacting your life. If that's true, how's that working for you? And I'm okay with them hating me forever if it brings them to the kingdom, right? So
Right.
when I find somebody that's purely rebellious, I literally just call into account, as the Bible says, wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. So you show me somebody who lives for the world and that's a life worth having, show me. Like, I've yet to find it. People are like, oh, they have a ton of money. I literally was going to do a story on this and probably still will. Imagine you walk into a village, you look to the left, and you see one house. It's the most well built. It has all these cars. There's tremendous piles of money. There's food stacked up, and he's alone, right? Or his wife, as he's there, is whispering to the neighbors. There's no proximity. There's no love between him and the kids. They come and go. And then I walk a little further. I look to the right, and I see a modest house with modest amounts of stuff and a family interacting and smiles and love. You tell me which one of these two has success. And that's
Right.
the thing, is that wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. So when I look at somebody who's in their life and they're like, you you really, in the absence of walking with God, can only be exceptional in a couple areas, but you cannot have an exceptional life. You can be exceptional at things in life, but in the absence of walking with God, it's impossible because we're selfish as fuck. So
Right.
otherwise, you're just chasing your own self interest, and you get a little trickle down economics to those around you. But if you're not willing to walk in the spirit and deny yourself, then inevitably your life will be self consuming. And that's where I start to call people on it, you know?
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it goes back to what Jordan referenced, the parable of the sower is like it all depends on the ground that it lands on. And so that's why I think this to me, this topic is so important. It's such a useful tool. It's not it's not the only tool, but it's a very useful one in today's day and age where pride is at an all-time high and you have the brilliant retards who have been for the longest time, especially in recent years, been the only voice that some of these people who otherwise would be fertile ground have been hearing. So this could provide a little bit of a counter to what could very well become very good soil. We just, the coolest thing about this whole process is like oftentimes, especially with like strangers, you'll plant seeds and walk away. You have no idea what happened. It could have been nothing. They could have just, not been interested or whatever. But the other thing that could have happened is that was like gnawing at them for a while, and then they started looking into it and their lives changed. So I don't know. I just think it's pretty cool. It's a useful tool. And especially, in today's day and age, because if you remember that verse that sorry, I heard the voice, I didn't know who it was, but the one about where they will become willfully ignorant, the first part of that verse was in the last days. So, that's another topic anyway, but I think we're like at the beginning of the season before that happens, which would make sense because we got a lot of pride going on. So, all right, we could probably get into one more. I'll probably have to do a part 2 or something, but we'll get into one more if there's no other comments or questions. And I might ask someone to pull up Genesis 6:13 to 19 and start reading it if you can.
I got it. Genesis 6:13. Then God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. And behold, I am about to destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with rooms, and shall cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you shall make it. The the length of the ark, 300 cubits, its breadth 50 cubits, its height 30 cubits. You shall make a window for the ark and finish it to a cubit from the top, and set the door of the ark in the side of it. You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks."
Yeah.
Keep going.
What are you at? Is that 19?
I'm at 17. Sorry, I thought you
Oh yeah,
said
keep going. Sorry,
17,
buddy.
but it's 19.
Yeah, go ahead, keep
I
going.
can keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. Behold, I am I am bringing the flood of water upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life from under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your wife's sons, and your sons' wives with you, and of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring two of every kind into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female.
Yeah, so essentially it's a similar theme, right? Because this is the other, this isn't the topic of this particular session here, but just as a oh by the way, remember God said because they're so violent. Like this is just a worldwide version of Sodom and Gomorrah where he's like there's no saving them. They can't even they've lost their way so bad it's impossible for them to find their way back. I have to quarantine what's mine from that. So that's what the whole thing about the ark is. So what you guys are looking at here, a dude in Kentucky took the so a cubit is like I want to say it's like 22 inches. So I think he said 300 cubits wide. So you're talking like, closer to 600 feet in length. And so this dude in Kentucky built a replica according to the Bible with the same dimensions. And that's what he came up with, right? And so um you can't really deviate too far from like it's like, whenever there's actual dimensions like with the tabernacle and with this, it's interesting to me because I'm like, okay, we should that's in there for a reason. Like, why are we paying attention to that? So anyway, that's that could have been what the arc looked like, right? It's pretty strong argument that is what it looked like. And then you could just see the scale of it. Those are people here. That's basically like a naval destroyer that these days. So anyway, oh yeah, actually before I do that, let me go back real quick. Can you read just 17 and 19? So Genesis 7, 17 and 19. See if I can find it too to make it go faster. If someone beats me to it, just start reading.
Then the flood came upon the earth for 40 days, and the water increased and lifted up the ark, so that it rose above the earth. The water prevailed and increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. The water prevailed more and more upon the earth, so that all the high mountains everywhere under the heavens were covered.
Okay, yeah, sorry. And then so yeah, I'll read this part. So then Genesis 8, 1 through 4. This is the cool part. So then God remembered Noah, every living thing, and all the animals that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were also stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters received continually from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the waters decreased. Here's the cool part. Like, it's pretty specific. It's like, why is he being this specific? Then the ark rested in the 7th month, the 7th day of the month, on the mountains of Ararat. Right? So that's what it looked like. Well, this is Mount Ararat right here. And the cool thing is, now if you guys already know this might bore you a little bit, but this is all petrified wood. None of that wood is indigenous to Ararat or Turkey. These are the same dimensions as the cubits laid out in the Bible. They have deck joists that run through here that are metal. Like, there's actual like metal brackets and stuff. I couldn't find the picture for that, or I couldn't download it because I was running out of time. But basically, using ground penetrating radar, they were able to find deck joists and brackets that are,
Hey,
metal.
real
Yep.
quick, I don't know about on y'all's screen, but on my screen, his cursor shows in the shadow. But if you guys remember back when he was showing us the footprints and his cursor was off to the left on that as well, for whatever reason, basically where your cursor's at is on that left shadow. It's not over the apex of that hill. So if you guys are
Oh,
watching this wondering, that's he's not looking at the shadow. It's the same as the footprints. For some reason, that cursor's offset left.
okay. Sorry, guys. So yeah, I'll just use the words then. So basically, the ridges, like picture, that's a boat, right? And so the ridges, if you look just on the inside of them, running top to bottom, there's two channels on either side of that top like ridge. If this is a mountain, that top center ridge on either side, there's two channels that were deck joists that were also metal, 90-degree angles, metal rivets. um and let me see, oh yeah, there was also the glue. I think they called it a pitch, but the glue that Noah used, they also found traces of that too. So anyway, so there's more to it. I don't want to keep you guys longer than an hour. Here's the ground penetrating radar. Oh yeah, and there's just to tie a bow on the arc thing. This is pretty cool. They just happened to find these anchor stones all around that ship on top of Mount Ararat. The like what they were trying to say that was, I think, the counter argument you'll hear, the leading counter argument I heard was that's these are naturally formed holes through the rock. Um, you know, brilliant retards in my opinion, but take what I was in the Navy. I know what a rudimentary anchor stone looks like, and it would probably look just like this. So anyway, we'll keep it there, but just to let you guys know, we do have like the other things we'll get into, if you guys are still interested, or we could just keep it here. But we also have like Mount Sinai. We got the Shroud of Turin. Um, like two or three other things on top of that. So I'll just save that for the next one. But I'll reserve it for any comments or questions y'all got.
Yeah, definitely want a part two it next week.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was good. Thanks, James. I have a quick question. Uh, when Noah was building the ark, I know that the water like came up from the ground and from above. I had heard, like, had there not been rain at this point, or is that just like kind of bad info? Does anybody know?
I think
Well,
that
go ahead.
personally, I think it's bad info. What
Yeah.
I think happened, I think personally what happened is the vault was cracked near the Grand Canyon because that's the only place we see that is carved out the way that it's carved out under massive flooding. So I think either it's kind of a radical thought, but when you look at um, very old civilizations that there's still remnants of, there's a lot in North America. It's very possible that Noah was in North America and the water cracked there and pushed him east, or the water cracked there and rose up to where he was at in the east. Either one of those makes sense to me. But when you look at Noah's boat, it's built virtually identical to typhoon boats, the same
Yep.
way. It's closed off, it's encapsulated, it's something that even under a massive typhoon will pop to the surface. So he was either in North America, because gophers are only in North and South America. Gopher
Yep.
wood is not actually a thing. They don't know what it is, but to ascribe that word to it, it is a transliteration of the word gopher, which basically just means like laminated. He used a laminated type of wood that was some kind of technology for the time period. But he was either in North America, based upon, like, to get crazy, if you look at the Tigris, Euphrates, and the other two rivers in Eden, the Mississippi, the Missouri, they actually better align with what's called during that time period of the Bible than does the Tigris and Euphrates now. So it's very possible that like Eden was in North America and it pushed the boat east to an entirely different continent as the water came in the way that a floodwater would, or he is in the east and the water's rising a little slower as it's coming in. But when you look at the Grand Canyon, there's nothing like it on the planet. So I think that makes the most sense that a heavy fracturing happened there and giant flood drops in.
Yeah, and we will get into that in part two too. The which is awesome. I'm actually really glad you brought that up. And the yeah, because I forgot I made so many slides I forgot what I put in here. But yeah, we got the Grand Canyon, we got some geyser action, we got the first who's your like Sky Daddy graffiti that was ever found. Um anyway, just if and like I said, if we I don't have this is just super interesting for me. So we can definitely move on to something else if we want, but yeah, just to let you guys know, we do have more stuff if you're interested.
I got a question. This is all super interesting about the Grand Canyon and stuff, but on the anchor stones, the crosses that are carved onto there, is that done afterwards? Because the cross wasn't a symbol back then,
Yeah.
was it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things done to these sites after the fact. Obviously well before us, so it would still be pretty old, but the is my so right now my cursor's on the big cross. Is that not the case, Jordan?
No, you're a
Oh,
little off. It's like
okay. Anyway, but
up
like
to the left.
these like on that picture on the right, um anyway, yeah, so those were done afterwards, and even on the Red Sea crossing, for example, wasn't able to find it in the Bible, but there's reports that King Solomon erected pillars to commemorate it, and there are pillars there. I didn't include those because I just couldn't find a biblical reference for it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but um, anyway, so there's a lot of things done to these sites after the fact that
Yeah,
weren't
it's
done that.
uh, it's basically the same as graffiti, right? Like
Right.
that's not a trait that we had to like teach young idiots to destroy stuff. It's just something that young idiots do. And so like forever and always that, and then also um the danger of tribalism is if you're tribalistic towards Christianity, you're going to do the same thing there is, you know, propagate your beliefs with stuff like you see there.
100%. You guys got any other comments or questions?
James, we're going to need to run an op where you distract John and we put a little graffiti on the side of that super expensive airplane. So,
Oh man, we could distract them with birds. That's all it takes. All right. Does someone want to lead us out with prayer? All right. I'll do it. All right, Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the gift of these men. Please watch over us as we lead our families this week into the new year. Actually, we could get into that too, because it might not be the new year. Anyway, I'm distracted. We ask that you fill us with your Holy Spirit, guide us on our paths towards you. Please help us guide our wives and children, if we have them, and just have us be good ambassadors for your will and your word where we can. Forgive us for all of the mistakes that we have made and will continue to make. And please help us have the strength to come to you if and when we do make those mistakes. We know that we thank you for your love and for your sacrifice for us and for always being there for us. And just watch over these men as they navigate their week in this world. We say these things through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Awesome, James. Appreciate you. We'll see y'all brothers next week.
Sweet. Thanks, James.
Hey guys, thanks a lot. You guys have a good one.
See ya.